Nobody noticed her at first. That was the thing about Elena Vasquez. She had spent 2 years learning how to disappear, how to fold herself into the gray fabric of a London afternoon, so completely that people walked past her, the way they walked past lampposts and park benches. She sat cross-legged on the stone ledge near the South Bank on September 13, 2016, with her father's broken guitar across her lap, and the city moved around her like water around a stone. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked. A couple tossed a coin without breaking their conversation. A child pointed, tugged a sleeve, was pulled away. Elena didn't mind. She had stopped playing for other people a long time ago. She closed her eyes, pressed her fingers to the frets. 3 of them still buzzed. A crack in the body had never been repaired. 2 tuning pegs were held in place with wire and hope, and she began to play Blackbird. Not for the tourists, not for the coins. She played it because it was Tuesday, and Tuesday was the day her father used to put the needle on the record after dinner and sit in the worn green chair by the window and close his own eyes and be somewhere else entirely. Elena had been 13 years old the last time she watched him do that. She was 16 now. The green chair was gone. The record player was gone, but the song was still hers. The first notes rose above the noise of the South Bank, tentative, then certain, then something else altogether. Something that had no name in any language Elena knew. The broken guitar sang anyway. It always did. For a moment, no one moved. 30 feet away, a silver-haired man in a navy jacket stopped walking. His companion said something. He didn't hear it. His eyes had found the girl on the ledge, the torn hoodie, the dark hair falling across her face, the shattered guitar that was somehow producing something unbearable and beautiful at the same time. And something in his expression shifted. Not surprise. Something older than surprise. Something that looked to the few people who would later try to describe it like recognition. He had written that song 58 years ago. He had played it 10,000 times. He had never once heard it sound like this. But that moment didn't start there. To understand why Paul McCartney stood frozen on that pavement, why his eyes filled before he even knew her name, you have to go back to a small flat in Peckham, and a green chair by a window, and a father who left his daughter the only thing he had. If you've ever held on to a song the way other people hold on to prayers, stay with this story. Carlos Vasquez came to London from Malaga, Spain in 1998 with 40 pounds in his pocket, a second-hand acoustic guitar strapped to his back, and the particular brand of stubborn optimism that only the very young or the very desperate ever carry across borders. He was 23 years old. He spoke almost no English. He had no job, no contacts, and no plan beyond a cousin's phone number written on a folded piece of paper tucked into his sock. He found work on construction sites within a week. He found Rosa, sharp-eyed, quick laughing from Seville, at a Spanish community dance in Elephant and Castle 6 months later. They married in 2000. Elena arrived in 2001. Her brother Mateo came 4 years after that. Small and early and stubborn, the way the best people sometimes are. The flat in Peckham was never large. 4th floor, no lift that worked reliably, a kitchen window that looked out onto a brick wall. But Carlos made it feel spacious in the way that certain people make any room feel spacious, with noise, with cooking smells, with the Beatles records he kept in the wooden crate beside the radiator. Abbey Road, Revolver, Let It Be. He had bought them one by one from a market stall in Bermondsey over the course of 3 years, treating each one like a small serious treasure. Blackbird was his song, not in the way people claim songs casually. He owned it the way you own something that has reached inside you and rearranged things. He told Elena once when she was 11 that the song was about people the world kept underestimating. People who were waiting for the moment when everything would finally open up. He tapped the record sleeve when he said it. Then he tapped her chest. She didn't fully understand what he meant. She was 11. On March 4, 2013, Carlos Vasquez suffered a cardiac arrest on a construction site in Bermondsey, 3 streets from the market stall where he had bought his first Beatles record 15 years earlier. He was 37 years old. He did not survive. He left behind Rosa, Elena, Mateo, a wooden crate of vinyl records, and a battered acoustic guitar with a crack along the body and 2 tuning pegs that had always been slightly unreliable. Inside the Abbey Road sleeve, folded twice, was a note. Elena found it 4 days after the funeral. It read, "For Elena, play it like you mean it. Love, Papa." She had never once stopped. By the summer of 2016, Elena Vasquez had learned the precise geometry of survival. She knew that Borough Market on a Saturday morning was worth 2 hours of her time and roughly 35 pounds if the weather held. She knew that the South Bank on a Tuesday afternoon was quieter but kinder. Tourists moved slower there, listened longer, dropped coins with more generosity than the weekday lunch crowd rushing past Borough. She knew that if she played Let It Be first, people stopped. If she followed it with Hey Jude, they stayed. And if she closed with Blackbird, some of them cried, which meant they always gave more on the way out. She had not chosen busking. Busking had chosen her, the way most necessary things choose people, quietly without asking, arriving at the exact moment when there was no other option left. Mateo's therapy sessions cost 85 pounds a fortnight, a figure the NHS waiting list could not yet absorb. Rosa worked 6 days a week and came home with her feet swollen and her voice thin. Elena was the oldest. The math was simple. She had been playing her father's guitar on London pavements for 14 months by September 2016. The guitar had not improved with age. The crack along the body had lengthened by 2 inches over the winter. The buzzing on the 3rd fret had spread to the 5th. A repair would cost more than she earned in a month. So she played it broken, the way her father had taught her to play everything. Like the imperfection was part of the music, not a problem with it. What had changed, and this was the thing Elena would not have been able to explain to anyone because she barely admitted it to herself, was the feeling, or rather, the absence of it. In the beginning, playing Blackbird on a street corner had felt like a private conversation with her father. By the 14th month, it felt like a habit, something her hands did while her mind was somewhere else, calculating, worrying, counting coins before they landed. She had stopped hearing the song. That was the truth of it. She played it every week, and she no longer heard it. On the morning of September 13, 2016, she packed the broken guitar into its case, touched her father's folded note once, without reading it, and took the bus to the South Bank. She had 85 pounds to earn by Friday. She was not thinking about music. She was thinking about Mateo. She had no idea that in 4 hours, a man who had written the song she no longer heard would make her hear it again for the first time. She was 3 songs in when the event's coordinator appeared. His name was Derek, and he had the particular energy of a man who had been given a clipboard and a high-visibility vest and had decided these things conferred authority. He told Elena, without cruelty, but without warmth either, that her busking permit covered Borough Market and not this stretch of the South Bank. She needed a separate permit for this location. She did not have one. He would need her to move on. Elena did not argue. She had learned early that arguing with men holding clipboards cost more energy than it returned. She began packing up, tucking the cardboard thank you sign under her arm, reaching for the guitar case. Around her, the small cluster of people who had stopped to listen began to drift away. Just like that, the moment dissolved the way street moments always dissolved. Instantly, without ceremony, as if it had never existed, she decided to play one more song before she left. Not for the coins, not for the drifting crowd. She pulled Blackbird out of habit, the way you hum something without choosing to. Her fingers found the opening pattern before her mind had fully decided to play it. She was already 3 bars in when she noticed that the people nearby had not entirely left. A few had paused, then a few more. She closed her eyes. She played the second verse, and something happened that she could not explain then and could not fully explain later. Something in the combination of the confrontation with Derek and the thought of Friday's bill and the way the September air smelled faintly of the Thames broke through the 14 months of habit, and she heard the song again, really heard it, the way she had heard it at 11 years old, sitting on the floor beside her father's green chair while the needle moved across Abbey Road and told her the song was about people the world kept underestimating. Her fingers stopped calculating. They just played. For a moment, no one moved. Not the tourists, not the people who had been leaving, not the silver-haired man in the navy jacket who had stopped walking 20 feet away and was now standing completely still with his hands in his pockets, watching a 16-year-old girl on a stone ledge play his song like it was the only true thing left in the world. Paul McCartney did not move for the entire length of Blackbird. He did not take out his phone. He did not whisper to his companion. He simply stood and listened. And somewhere behind his eyes, something was happening that the September crowd could see but not name. When the last note ended, he walked toward her. Elena was reaching for her guitar case when she heard the footsteps stop directly in front of her. She looked up. The silver-haired man was closer than she expected. He wasn't performing anything. No wide smile, no arms-out celebrity entrance. He stood quietly, hands still in his pockets, studying her the way someone studies a thing they are trying to understand rather than impress. His eyes were pale and very direct, and slightly wet, though he didn't seem to know that last part. "That was mine," he said quietly. "That song." Elena's brain did what brains do in genuinely impossible moments. It stalled. She looked at his face. She ran it against every image stored in 16 years of memory. The record sleeves in the wooden crate, the documentary she had watched at 2 in the morning 3 months ago when she couldn't sleep, the photographs her father kept tucked inside the Abbey Road liner notes creased from handling, the voice, the eyes, the particular way he was standing like someone who had spent 60 years being looked at and still hadn't entirely gotten used to it. She started. "Paul," he said, and he sat down beside her on the stone ledge. Not nearby. Beside her, the way her father used to sit beside her on the floor when she was learning her first chords, close enough that she could feel the warmth of another person, close enough that she was not alone. The crowd around them made a sound that was not quite a gasp. Phones rose. Someone at the back said his name aloud, and the word rippled outward through the gathering people like a stone dropped in still water, but Elena barely heard any of it. She was looking at the man sitting 12 inches away from her on a London ledge, and her mind had gone very quiet and very clear, the way minds sometimes go in the moments that will define everything that comes after. "How long have you been playing?" he asked, nodding at the guitar. 3 years, she said. Then, because the truth had a way of arriving before she could stop it, "My dad taught me. He died." Paul McCartney didn't offer condolences. He didn't reach for the comfortable phrase. He simply nodded once slowly. The way someone nods when they have received information they already understood in their bones before it was spoken. "How old were you?" he asked. 13. He was quiet for a moment. The South Bank kept moving around them, but the space they occupied had gone still, the way the eye of something always goes still. "I was 14, he said finally, "when I lost my mother." The crowd went silent, not because the words were surprising. Some of them knew the biography, knew about Mary McCartney and the cancer and the Liverpool boy who had turned grief into the most recognizable music of the 20th century, but because of the register in which he said it, quietly, directly, like a door opening inward, like a man handing a stranger something he kept private because he recognized in her the person who needed it most. Elena's chin trembled. She pressed her lips together and looked down at the broken guitar in her hands. "Can I?" Paul nodded toward it. She handed it to him without speaking. He turned it over. He examined the crack, ran his thumb along the split wood, tested the buzzing fret with one careful finger. He did not wince at any of it. He positioned his hands and played 4 bars of Blackbird, slow from memory, tender as a question, on a guitar with rusted strings and a broken body. And it was still unmistakably, completely, entirely him. He handed it back. "Still sings," he said. Then he looked at her, and he said the thing that broke the crowd open, and broke Elena open, and broke something in the afternoon itself that would never quite close again. "Your father knew what this song was really about," he said, "and so do you." Elena did not try to hold it. 1 tear, then 2. She laughed a little through them, embarrassed, overwhelmed. 16 years old on a London pavement with a dead man's guitar and a living legend sitting close enough to touch. Paul McCartney smiled, not the performance smile, the real one. Someone in the crowd called out, "Play it together." Paul glanced at Elena, one raised eyebrow, a question. She laughed again, astonished, half convinced she had fallen asleep on the bus and none of this was happening, and put her fingers back on the frets. Paul leaned in slightly and began to hum the melody low and unhurried, while Elena's broken guitar carried the finger-picking beneath it. For 90 seconds on a Tuesday afternoon in September, 60 strangers stood in absolute silence on the South Bank and watched the man who wrote Blackbird play it one more time with the girl who had never stopped needing it. When the last note ended, the crowd erupted. Elena stared at her own hands. They were shaking. Before the crowd fully closed in, Paul did one quiet thing. He reached into the inside pocket of his navy jacket and pulled out a small moleskine notebook, a habit carried since the 1960s. Always writing, always catching the thing before it disappeared. He tore a page out, wrote something in less than 30 seconds, folded it once, and handed it to Elena. "Read it later," he said. "Not now." Then his companion touched his arm, and he was absorbed into the gathering crowd. Handshakes, phones, his name said aloud in a dozen different accents, and Elena was alone again on the stone ledge with a broken guitar and a folded piece of paper sitting in her open case beside 17 pounds in coins. She didn't open it. She sat for a long time, watching the South Bank resume itself around her. The tourists moved. The pigeons returned. Derek with his clipboard had long since disappeared. That evening, in the Peckham flat with Matteo asleep and Rosa still on shift, Elena unfolded the note under the kitchen light. There was a phone number, and beneath it in handwriting she recognized from 100 album liner notes, "Elena, Blackbird was written for people the world keeps underestimating. You understand the song, don't stop playing. Paul." Rosa came home at 9 to find her daughter sitting at the kitchen table holding a piece of paper and crying. She read the note, set it down carefully, sat across from her daughter in the silence of the small kitchen, and said nothing for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and covered Elena's hand with hers. "Your father," she said softly, "always knew you would find your way back to it." 6 weeks after that Tuesday afternoon, Elena Vasquez walked through the doors of the Brit School in Croydon on a full scholarship, arranged quietly, without fanfare, through a foundation connected to Paul McCartney's office. She carried her father's guitar on her back. A luthier had repaired it the week before, free of charge. The crack was patched with a piece of spruce slightly lighter than the original wood. You could still see exactly where it had broken. Elena had asked them to leave it visible. She didn't want it hidden. She graduated in 2019. By then, she had written 23 original songs, taught herself piano in her second year, and performed at the end-of-year showcase to a standing ovation that lasted 4 minutes. She dedicated every performance to the same person. She never had to say his name. The people who knew her already knew. Today, Elena teaches guitar to children in Peckham 2 evenings a week, free of charge in the same neighborhood where she grew up. Her father's repaired guitar hangs on the wall of the small room where she teaches. She doesn't play it in lessons. She lets the children look at it, the visible crack, the lighter patch of wood, the worn frets, and she tells them the same thing every time. This guitar was broken. It's still played. So can you. On the wall beside it hangs a small framed photograph. A teenage girl and a silver-haired man sitting side by side on a London ledge, both looking down at a broken guitar, both lost in the same song. Beneath it, in Elena's handwriting, "Papa, I'm still playing." If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Jax Omnix Diaries for more stories that prove one moment of kindness can change everything.